Hello, everyone. I'm Michele DeLuca. This is my friend Nancy Proulx. Today we're talking about election anxiety and overwhelm. Oh my goodness, yes. As you know, if you're watching this in America and probably anywhere else in the world, our country is divided by politics today, nearly in half. Some of it quite angry and ugly. As far back as February of this year, the American Psychiatric Association reports that studies showed that 55% of us were overwhelmed by the election and always felt angry or often felt angry, and that at least 65% of us were exhausted in February as we approached the elections in early November. I know that we're all dealing with this, and Nancy and I want to talk a little bit about the things that you can do to bring yourself to a state of calm and peace and possibly even joy. Although that might be pushing the envelope
that
until
could be a little bit pushing it, but
it's all going to end.
All about raising it a little bit at a time, right?
That's right. So Nancy's going to give us some concepts through her work as an intuitive consultant and a healer, particularly as a healer of animals and
what they've taught me
and what they've
and
taught
how
you.
they deal with stress so much in a more productive manner than humans do.
Nancy's done a lot of research on horses. I like to call her a horse whisperer. She's trained with best-selling author Carolyn Mays, who is a renowned metaphysicist and spiritual philosopher, best-selling author, as I said.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about all the things we can do to stay centered this time of year.
Yeah.
And into our lives.
Right. And, you were mentioning you first noticed your anxiety when your kids were young.
Yes, I was showing you my first documentary, which details the life I was leading. My newspaper had closed, so I'd lost my job, and I was a young mother with two amazing, brilliant young sons who were little wild monkeys, and I adored them, but I had nothing to teach them about life. And so I set on a search for the meaning of life, and I, at the time, wanted to find some clues to my own anxieties and overwhelm. And I read every book I could get my hands on. You're watching a little bit of the documentary right now.
Yeah.
And I came to meditation, which everyone knows is a wonderful tool, but I guess not as many people use.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's just not effective for some people, or they just haven't put enough commitment into making it a practice, or they start out maybe too intensely with it instead of just tiptoeing into the idea of it. But it is very, very effective in reducing our stress and bringing us to the present moment, and just being able to step away from the anxiety and connect in below it into that deeper place within ourselves.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I read the book for that documentary. I kind of featured the work of Herbert Benson, who wrote, he was a Yale doctor who wrote the relaxation response. And afterwards I interviewed 5 experts: a journalism professor, a doctor who worked with the deaf and dying, a psychiatrist, and I went into a biofeedback lab to actually find the proof that shows if we can calm ourselves, that we are healthier. And if we cannot calm ourselves, it's not good for our bodies. It's not good for our psyches. It's certainly not good for our spirits.
Right. Our nervous system just gets overloaded.
Yes. So I have some things to point out about what some of the experts say. But first I want to talk with Nancy, because Nancy's whole work right now is about getting people in touch with their bodies and teaching them how to feel what's going on within, so that you can calm yourself, so that you can find peace, and so you can be the most effective human. So how did that all begin for you, and where do you take that during this crazy
during this crazy time
season?
One of the things that I have to realize is that everybody has a different size cup. And I remembered this from the first naturopath that I went to. And it was interesting because I didn't think I had anxiety. I was bringing my children to see the naturopath. And he kind of explained that everybody has a cup, and it's the overflow. Okay,
so it's like an energetic cup, like
our bodies, like the container.
The container,
and it's
I like
the
that. Okay.
overflow. Different things affect it. Okay, Age. I was a lot more able to handle stress when I was younger and had a lot of hormones in my body. So age, definitely. How we handle stress. How did I handle it then? How do I handle it now? Genetics come into it. Your health comes into it. All of these things, will affect how well your container can handle the stress.
An overload of stress coming into your physicality.
Right. So I think, we have to not clump everybody into the same.
Sure. I'm guessing if you're a librarian compared to an emergency room nurse, that your abilities to handle stress are different.
Right.
Because the librarian hears something above a whisper sometimes and goes like, what's happening? And the emergency room nurse is used to chaos, extraordinary chaos.
Yeah, and I would have to say the emergency room nurse probably has a lot of ability to handle emotion and to handle the stress, and maybe has a lot of emotional agility and can handle and can work well under pressure. Not everybody is programmed that way. So we need to recognize, are we in the right job? Is our body and the way we're programmed? Okay. Are we in the correct job for our body? Somebody who does not handle stress might not want to be an ER nurse. They might want to work in
a pet store
or a nursing home or something home, where they're
it's quieter, the pace is slower.
Yeah, so these are things that we have to recognize, which comes back to what does it feel like in our body? Like, it's going to feel different for you. Anxiety in your body is going to feel different than what it will feel like in my body. For me, my body, like, I'll start my breathing will shorten. I'll notice my sleep will get disturbed. Okay, so it feels a little different now. I'm not. How would you process it, or how would you recognize that?
My anxiety levels have changed certainly since I've gotten older. Typically, nothing phases me. I can really move about the planet, and even when things surprise me, I have felt kind of proud at my ability to kind of ride them out like a wave. And lately, I find that I'm a little bit more easily discombobulated, and that's how it shows up for me, which is I just feel like I'm almost like vibrating at a level that I can't control, and not vibrating in a good way. But it doesn't happen often because I really am very even-keeled.
But we're talking about the election and the discussions at home. So
yes.
That's what it feels like in your body when you're...
No. Because
okay.
I was specifically thinking of an incident where I had no control. I was with a group of people and I was racing to get to a bus, and I didn't want to hold them all up. And I remember feeling just agitated, like I was completely out of control. As far as these elections are concerned, I've mentioned before, my husband and I are on different sides of the political spectrum, and we discuss every day aspects of the election, and sometimes that doesn't go well. We're both trying to be very loving in this process, but we are both deeply passionate about the future of our country and the future of our children. And any grandchildren we might have, and the children that they might have. We both care deeply about the country, but we have different ideas on how that looks. And even if both of us are not completely behind the candidate we are choosing, we still feel a certain way about which way the country needs to go to be healthy and to be successful as a nation. And so that causes a good deal of stress in my marriage, but thankfully we can get past that and still have dinner together without too much upset. However, I do feel that in my stomach, so I try to keep those conversations away from dinner time, because I can feel that my stomach starts jumping.
Yeah.
And
not good to digest your food.
No,
when we're talking about politics or watching the TV.
Yeah.
One of the things is, do not have the TV on when you're the news on when you're eating.
That's a house rule, that there is no TV news while we're eating, because I start speaking to the television while I'm getting dinner ready, and never in a happy way. I'm sometimes disappointed in my the news industry and the media and the way they don't tell all of the story, and they don't continue to update us, and so we end up feeling like we don't have all the information, and on occasion like we can't trust the information that we're getting, which causes more upset. And for me, again, that's kind of been the disruption in my life, is I'm disappointed at the lack of information and some of the juggling of truth.
Right. So I think that some of the things that we want to be aware of is that we don't want to just make an emotional decision around this election. We want to fact check. We want to do some research. I think what frustrates my husband the most is that a lot of people just don't even watch the news at all. They're just making an emotional decision on how they're going to vote that day.
Or after talking to their friends and hearing information that somehow it's like the campfire story that changes with every telling.
Right.
Are you and Peter on the same side of
the
spectrum?
We
are.
That's
a good thing. You probably have more peaceful evenings than
we do. But I have to limit the amount of news that's being on in the house, where he can listen to it all day long, and he's very informed. He'll listen to a lot of podcasts and things that he'll get different views on it. He'll try to listen to both spectrums of the news to see how they're reporting. So he's trying to get that overall picture to make an informed decision around it.
Good. And that's another good way to keep yourself feeling a little bit calmer, is to have a lot of opinions, so that you at least know that the opinion you're holding has some facts behind it.
Right.
And so I still feel as if I could use some help with maintaining an even keel in the course of discussing politics with my husband. So thoughts?
Well, one of I think this is a great time to kind of introduce the horse exercise and what I have learned from horses. We call it the threshold exercise. So whenever I had been riding maybe a horse that is maybe new to being outside or new to being exposed to something, the old way of training horses was to force them to go to it, to force us to force them to face the thing that they were fearful of head on. Well, what we learned from the animals is that it shuts them down. It causes them to, especially horses, because they're prey animals, to disassociate and leave the body. So they shut down. Horses can use that defense mechanism, okay? Just like people. They can get trained into, I'm just going to leave mentally every time something comes up. So what we found out from this way of training was it was numbed out people riding numbed out horses. So nobody was ever fully present. So there was this exercise that has been introduced over the years, which is called the threshold exercise.
And it's introduced among horse trainers who are far more connected to their horses than people used to be.
Yes, and it's to recognize that the horse cannot process anything being connected to the brain and the body. If we're going on a scale of 1 to 10, if it starts raising above a 3, when it starts going to a 4 or 5, the horse is no longer in the body and the brain is no longer working. So
I recognize those numbers in my own self.
So we use this.
Tell me about how we can use that.
Well, we use it for the programs with when we do the Wounded Warrior
The
work.
Wounded Warrior programs. Nancy works with veterans who are suffering from PTSD. And you bring them into the barn and they work with the horses. They don't ride the horses, but they learn from the horses and the horses' ability to stand in their own truth. Something like that?
Yeah, and so, how a horse would feel when you're taking total control over them. They need to really trust you. Well, what we do, first of all, when we're working the first exercise before we allow the participants to lead the horse, is to teach them about their own body and their own level of anxiety. So we'll have one person close their eyes
Okay.
And then we'll have another person put their hand over the person with the closed eyes like this. And the person with their eyes closed will be led through an obstacle course.
Oh,
Okay.
fun.
But
for the person who's doing the leading.
Yeah, it is. You'll feel very, very vulnerable having your eyes closed and trusting somebody else doing the leading. What we tell people is that the person with their eyes closed, once they start to feel above a 3 anxiety level in their body, to recognize what it feels like, first of all, in their body, that once it starts going to a 4, they need to say stop.
Interesting.
Okay. And they need to ground themselves and breathe. And once they feel relaxed again, they can start.
They can go ahead. Now, I'm guessing that some people have difficulty understanding what level of their own anxiety from 1 to 10 they're at. I mean, 10 being what? An explosion out of the top of your head, and 1 or 0 being complete peace. So somewhere between there.
Yeah. But it is. It's about. It's a great exercise just to realize how vulnerable you feel and how easily you might be able to go to a 4 in a vulnerable situation.
So let's talk about this, because as humans, you said we want to, let's just say we're talking about the veterans now, and typically those are typically the people you're working with in this particular exercise. They stop when they're at a 4 because they've already come to understand the difference between 0 to 10, and they start up again. And this is supposed to teach them
to recognize their own anxiety.
Okay, good. I like that.
Okay, to recognize their own anxiety and then use a tool to relax that anxiety. And they have the voice, and the courage to say stop. I need some time.
Right.
And it's self-care.
Is it hard for the veterans to admit that they are vulnerable?
No, for some of them, it's first of all very hard. Extremes. Some they can't even close their eyes.
Wow.
Because that's how much anxiety they have in their body.
Wow.
Okay, but for them to realize that is huge. Oh, what does it feel like? Okay, so this can show them. The next time I'm walking into a store, if I get that, I can say, no, you know what? I'm not ready to go into the store. I'm going to go take a few breaths and see if I can, do this. And it might not be a good day.
Right.
And maybe I'll come back on another day.
Okay, so that's an excellent way to understand the amount of anxiety that we carry in our bodies. Yeah. It may be hard to find a partner to walk you about through difficult obstacles. What would you suggest people do instead if they don't have a partner, they don't feel comfortable asking someone to lead them around? What would be an alternative to determining your level of stress at any given time?
Just being aware when you go into a new place, to being aware of what sets you off. For me, an animal in pain will set me off. Okay, you have to know yourself, right?
Yes.
What are my triggers? Okay, and then what does it feel like, and what does it feel like when it starts to get to a 4? And what can I do in each situation?
So let's take me, for instance. So I'm having a discussion with my husband about politics. Last night he said, please don't talk about this right now. I just don't want to ruin our evening. And that raised my anxiety level and stress level, because if we can't talk about it, how am I going to convert him? No, that's not what I mean at all. If we can't talk about it, then how will I come to understand him better, or understand the kind of thinking that he's bringing to our discussion? And secondly, we should be able to talk about anything, even though it upsets us both. What I'm trying to get to a place is where it doesn't upset either one of us. I'm not sure that's possible. So let's go back to stress levels.
So your husband...
Oh, wow. You're going to say that, aren't you?
Yes.
He knew his stress level.
He knew where he was at.
And
it's okay to say, okay, you know what? And we have to, that was like, okay, we need to talk about this. So your agenda was up front.
Yes.
And
I had more facts for him.
Yeah. And it was like, oh, you know what? He was just not opening to listening at that point. So no matter what I say, he's not going to hear it anyway, right? Or it's going to cause him more stress. But good for him for
and he did it as politely as he could, but I still took that as a shutdown. So now I was dealing with my own anxiety, which was like, how am I going to change the world if I can't even change my husband? Which is not my job. It's no one's job to change anyone. If you can have a conversation to share some ideas and come to understanding, that's a good place to be. But it's not my job to change him. This is how we then move on to some coping mechanisms when you can't change the world. And here is where I might include the serenity prayer, which is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that's a beautiful place to begin accepting your own anxiety, your own self, and the people around you. In this crazy time, some of the experts that I checked said things that you can do to bring yourself to a little better place. One would be to turn off your phone, turn off your television, and walk away from anything digital, or at least limit the exposure. We all know this. We all know we should meditate, or at least we should know that, because statistics prove it brings us to peace. So would be turning off all your digital devices, which we don't do because we think, oh my gosh, what if something happens that I don't know about to make this all worse? Or there is a feeling of dread. A lot of people are reporting feeling in the stories and studies that I've looked at. I'll post a few of them below the YouTube video so that you can click on a few to find what the studies are saying. But one thing was that we have this feeling that the world is coming to an end, and we have to pull back from that. We can't, that's called catastrophic thinking. And the world could be, on any given day, there are things going on in the world that can be dangerous to us. We probably would do best to learn to live through those. And so to pull back and to stay in the present moment. And we've talked about staying in the present moment a lot.
Right.
The present is the only place where we can live, because the future hasn't happened and the past is over.
Yeah. And we can, and like what you're talking about, what you're explaining in your language is you can raise the vibration within yourself to hope. It's one higher than anger. It's about just keep raising. We can raise this to hope.
We're talking about vessels, our bodies being vessels, and the idea of hope elevates us. It elevates our vibration. It elevates our spirits. And I was also reading that things like gratitude and inspiration. Someone even said, if you have to have your phone on, go watch some of those puppy videos where the people
silly
kitty videos,
something that makes you laugh. Like even my husband and I both get along as far as our political agenda, but still sometimes we need a break. Like, do something fun, watch a funny movie, do something restorative for yourself.
Do something
Go
fun.
Get a massage.
Yes.
Take some time to meditate, kiss your doggies,
all of that, very healing. We know this. There are studies.
So it's a matter of just, spending that time to also reflect on, why do I have to listen to it 24 hours a day? What am I getting off of that? And realizing, maybe if I'm listening to the right channel, I feel better.
Right.
Okay. But, then you listen to the polls and you're like, oh, it's like neck and neck. So, you just have to surrender, right?
Surrender.
Yeah.
We're back to the Michael Singer surrender experiment that we talked about in our last podcast, which we also know is a very healthy thing to do, which is to let go of the outcome. You can't control the outcome of this election. And the only thing you can control is your own interior response to what's going on around you. The world is always going to be in chaos somewhere, someplace. Bad things are happening. If you can find a place of peacefulness, if you can find a place of gratitude, if you can find a place of love, which all the major religions and all the greatest prophets
Mm-hmm.
have told us is the only answer,
Mm-hmm.
then your life will be better.
Yeah, just trying to be objective about everything as is the best way, when you're looking at it. And, hopefully, I don't know something that, I know the young kids, that Generation Z, they're really strong on their beliefs. And, there's a lot of good things too that is coming out of that. I know that they are kind of going back to a little bit more conservative. Like we still want to follow,
Tradition.
And love and honor one another.
Certainly.
And
change is hard. And so as what I have felt always politically was, please let's meet in the middle. Let's find a way. We are Americans. Let's find a way to live together in peace. Peace is really what the very vast majority of us are interested in, a place where our families can live in peace and comfort, and in an economy that is stable, and we can afford things like housing and food.
That adds to the collective consciousness. So, when recognizing when we're in war within ourselves.
Let's talk about that for a second. War within ourselves and the collective consciousness. What appears to be happening is we are working each other up. Oh my God, what if they win? Oh my God, what if they win? These are terrible people. These are terrible people. These are terrible ideas. These are terrible ideas. Now what?
Again, it's like I can recognize, you know what? I'm watching this channel. Okay, so that it calms my anxiety. Okay, it's being aware of what your agenda is and saying, okay, I'm not sure that's a really healthy way to deal with this. Okay, I might want to turn it off and learn to stay centered and learn to do the things we were saying. Let me go out and ride my horse. Let me, do my volunteer work. Let me go be with some children. Let me go do
change
something
the energy.
else. You just have to realize, you know what? I'm really at war within myself. And the reason I am watching this is to soothe my anxiety.
Right.
So you have to be honest with yourself and why you're doing something. Some people, it'll be like, I'm going to go get a drink. I'm going to, whatever it is. Or, I'm going to have this conversation with my husband, and he, I want him to listen. You have an agenda. And it's like we need to get past that, because that is a state of war. Okay?
Yes, that is a state of war.
It's an internal state of war.
It's an internal state of war. And if we can calm the internal war going on within us, our fears and our anxieties and our overwhelm, then we can add a little light to the world, and we can add a little, certainly, light to our lives.
Yeah, like, separation. There's so much separation going on in the world. Well, let's look at separation in the body. Let's separate the right brain from the left brain. Okay, let's separate the mind from the body. Let's work on those things within yourself so that you become a unified human being yourself. Your mind, body, spirit, and emotions all on the same page. Okay? So I would look for unity within, and that adds to the collective consciousness.
I love that. It makes it sound so simple.
Oh, it's hard. You know that. It's a life work. But it's needed more than ever right now.
More than ever.
Yeah.
More than ever, because we really do want to live in a happy country, in a happy world, and our own happiness and peace will add to the collection.
Yeah.
Will add to the
no matter which way it turns out. Still, we've added to, we can't control that. All we can control is what we add into the collective consciousness.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm going to work on that.
Okay.
0 to 10. I'm going to stay at 3. So thanks,
Yeah.
Nancy.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again.